Good morning. I would suggest that the 4 words that shape Christian life are these: Thy will be. That's right. Thy will be done. Now, these words come from the prayer Our Father, which we will say later on. Thy will be done. Now, I mention this because Jesus, in today's gospel, gives us a glimpse into God's will. And what thy will be done means in his Sermon on the Mount, which is probably the most important sermon of Jesus in the New Testament. Now, this weekend and next weekend, we hear 6 simple, or maybe not so simple, statements or teachings that start with, "You have heard that it was said, but I say to you." I, Jesus, say this to you. Now, Father Dan Harrington, who taught at Boston College, and I took a class with him on the Gospel of Matthew, always reminded us in his class that in the Gospel of Matthew, Jesus is presented as the fulfillment of what we call the Old Testament. Matthew makes it clear, Jesus did not come to abolish the law, but to fulfill the law, not to replace it, but to explain it, to tell us what is the meaning of the law and what is God's will. Now, let's look today at the first "you have heard, but I say to you" statement. Today we had all 4 of them, and it's impossible to look at all of them in detail. It would take us forever. And we all want to get to the Super Bowl. Now, but this first statement sets the stage for the next 5. And it speaks of something I think that all of us struggle with to some degree. Probably the most common struggle we all have. And this is what Jesus says. "You have heard that it was said to your ancestors, 'You shall not kill.'" Now, where was it said? In the 10 Commandments, in the Old Testament. So we know what was said. And whoever kills will be liable to judgment. But I say to you, whoever is angry with your brother or sister will be liable to judgment. So now when Jesus says, "But I say to you," he invites us to go deeper. He sets a higher standard for his followers. He calls it greater righteousness, something greater. In the 10 Commandments, the 6th one is clear. Do not kill. And it's valid. It's not abolished. It's not replaced. But Jesus wants us to go to the root of the problem. That is to say, to the emotion that would, in the first place, lead someone to do something as horrible as killing another person, or hurting another person, or bringing about harm. And that root problem in the mind of Jesus, that root emotion is anger. In the mind of Jesus, anger is the foundation of all the problems, of all that is bad in this world. Now, of course, it's a very human emotion, and we fall into it every so often, or maybe more often than we should. It's certainly all over the place, on social media in particular. It is very human. Anger can be powerful, it can be destructive, and the truth of the matter is that it is something we all deal with in life. Now, but you may say to me, Father Tomasz, what about Jesus throwing tables upside down in the temple area and chasing all the animals and all the people out of the temple? Well, I thought you would bring that up. Now you see, in the Bible, there are two types of anger. One, you find what is called the righteous anger. That kind of anger is different. That's not what Jesus is talking about in today's gospel. Righteous anger ultimately seeks justice, ultimately seeks what is good, and is passionate about that. This anger will boil up within you when you see that somebody is treated unjustly, when something wrong is being done, when someone is bullying another person, and then you yell, "Stop, that is not right." But the anger that Jesus speaks about today, that anger does not seek goodness or justice or what is right. That anger seeks to destroy, to diminish. That anger seeks what is wrong, wants to destroy literally another person or reputation or character in this world. And to that anger, Jesus says, no, that's not what we are called to. That's not what it means to follow Jesus. So again, in the mind of Jesus, anger is sort of the root problem and the foundation, And the truth, again, of the matter is that we all fall into it every so often. But he reminds us today, and he calls us to something greater. And he promises that if we can live with the anger-free attitude as much as we can, then we will be the greatest in the kingdom of God. That's what greatness is all about. As I was thinking about it, I was wondering what would be one quality, just to give it a positive spin, that would be the opposite of that kind of anger that Jesus criticizes today. And I think that one of the qualities that's the opposite is kindness. Kindness instead of anger. You see, unlike anger that creates chaos, kindness creates calm. Kindness creates calm. So in a way, today's gospel, or at least this first statement, is an invitation for all of us to practice kindness. You know, we live in a world that's so fast-paced and we hurry all the time. It's so easy to get impatient and lose our cool, so to speak. But today Jesus says to all of us as his followers, always strive for that which is greater, for that greater righteousness. Always strive to avoid anger and to practice kindness. And you will be the greatest in the kingdom of God.